Emma sat beside Lucas in the car, watching the quiet road stretch out ahead of them. It was late in the evening, the kind of night when the world felt calm and sleepy. The air outside was cool, and a thin layer of fog floated above the ground. The streetlights were far apart, and most of the houses they passed had their lights turned off. It was the kind of peaceful night that made everything seem slower. Emma loved these quiet drives home after spending time with their family. Lucas kept his hands steady on the steering wheel, humming softly to the music playing from the radio. He was a calm and patient driver, the type of person who never rushed. Emma looked out of the window and smiled at how empty the road was. "It feels like the whole world is asleep," she said softly. Lucas chuckled. "Yeah, just us in the fog tonight." They had just passed the last gas station on the edge of town, where the road turned into a long stretch surrounded by trees on both sides. The branches formed soft shadows on the pavement, and the fog made everything look like a scene from a quiet movie. Emma leaned her head against the window, letting the soft sound of the tires rolling on the road relax her. Suddenly, Lucas frowned and slowly pressed his foot on the brake. "Do you see that?" he whispered. Emma straightened up quickly. At first, she saw nothing but fog and shadows. Then, as the headlights cut through the mist, a small shape appeared in the middle of the road. "It looks like a dog," Emma said, her voice gentle but surprised. Lucas brought the car to a slow stop. The little shape became clearer. It was indeed a dog, a golden retriever with a light-colored coat that looked dusty and wet. The dog was standing very still, its tail tucked down, its ears slightly back. Its fur was messy and its eyes reflected the car's headlights, making it look both scared and unsure. Emma felt her heart tighten. She loved animals, and she could tell this dog was frightened. "Oh no, poor thing," she whispered. Lucas nodded, keeping his eyes on the road. He didn't want to scare the dog by moving too fast. The fog around them grew a little thicker as the couple carefully pulled the car over to the side of the road. Lucas turned on the hazard lights, and the soft, blinking orange light added a warm glow to the cold night. "Should we help it?" Emma asked, already unbuckling her seatbelt. Lucas gave her a gentle smile. "I knew you'd say that," he said kindly. He parked the car completely and reached for the small blanket they always kept in the back seat. It was an old but soft blanket Emma liked to use on long trips. When they opened the car door, the cool night air brushed against their faces. Emma shivered a little but stepped out carefully. The road was quiet except for the sound of crickets hidden in the grass and the soft hum of the car's engine. She slowly walked toward the dog, keeping her steps soft and steady. The golden retriever didn't move. It watched her with wide, shiny eyes. Emma noticed that its collar was muddy and torn. There was a piece of a broken leash still hanging from it. She also saw that the dog's paws were dirty, like it had been walking for a long time. "Hey, it's okay," Emma whispered softly, as if she were talking to a child. "We're not going to hurt you. You're safe." She lowered herself to a crouch so she wouldn't look too tall or scary. Lucas stood behind her, holding the blanket. He didn't say a word, not wanting to make the dog nervous. Emma stretched out her hand slowly, letting the dog sniff her fingers. The dog tilted its head a little and then took one small step forward. "There you go. Good boy," Emma whispered again, her voice warm. The dog's tail moved just a little, still low but no longer tightly tucked. That small movement made Emma's heart swell with relief. She could feel how nervous and tired this little creature was. After a few moments, she gently placed the blanket over the dog's back. It didn't fight or run away. Instead, it let out a soft, tired sigh, as if it had finally found a moment of safety. Lucas knelt down beside them and carefully checked for a name tag, but there was none. "No name," he said softly. "No address either." "Maybe it got lost," Emma replied. She looked up and down the road, but there was no other car, no house with lights on, no sound of anyone searching. It was as if the dog had appeared out of nowhere. Lucas wrapped the blanket more securely around the dog. "We can take it home for the night," he said gently. "Tomorrow we can call the local shelter or vet and see if anyone's missing a golden retriever." Emma nodded immediately. She couldn't imagine leaving the dog alone on the cold, empty road. "Yes, we'll keep it warm tonight." Poor thing must be so tired. The couple carefully guided the dog toward the car. At first it hesitated, sniffing the ground, looking around as if unsure whether to trust them. But when Emma softly said, "Come on, sweetheart," and gave the lightest tug on the blanket, the dog followed. It climbed into the back seat and curled into a small ball. As they drove away, Emma turned in her seat to keep an eye on their new guest. The dog's eyes were half closed, its breathing slow and steady. "He's so sweet," she said softly. Lucas smiled. "Looks like we made a new friend tonight." The fog outside was still thick and the road felt even quieter now. But inside the car, the warmth from the heater filled the space. Emma reached back to gently stroke the dog's head. Its fur was soft under the layer of dirt, and it leaned into her touch, almost like it had been waiting for someone to be kind. The drive home was longer than usual because Lucas kept his speed slow, careful not to make any sudden moves that might scare the dog. Emma talked softly, telling little stories, not really for Lucas but for the golden retriever in the back seat. When they finally reached their house, Lucas parked the car in the driveway. The porch light was still on, casting a warm golden glow over the front steps. It felt safe, like a little island of light in the quiet night. Emma gently lifted the blanket around the dog again. "Come on, sweetheart. Let's get you inside where it's warm." The dog slowly climbed out of the car. Its legs wobbled a little, and Emma could tell it was exhausted. Lucas walked ahead and opened the front door. The dog sniffed the air cautiously before stepping inside. The living room was cozy and clean, with soft lamps giving the space a gentle light. Emma quickly grabbed an old towel to wipe off the mud from the dog's paws. It didn't resist. In fact, it seemed almost grateful. "I think it's been alone for a while," Emma said softly. "Look at how tired it is." Lucas nodded and went to get a bowl of water. When he placed it near the dog, it drank slowly, not wildly, as if it had learned to be careful. Emma found an old pillow and placed it on the floor like a small bed. She wrapped the dog in the soft blanket again, and it lay down, curling up like it belonged there. They both sat on the couch watching the dog settle in. The clock on the wall showed it was almost midnight. Outside, the wind made a soft whistling sound through the trees. Inside, everything was still and calm. Emma leaned against Lucas's shoulder. "I can't believe we found him like that. What if we hadn't been on that road tonight?" Lucas gave her hand a gentle squeeze. "Then maybe he wouldn't have found a home," he said with a smile. The golden retriever lifted its head for a moment as if listening to them, then sighed softly and closed its eyes. It looked peaceful, safe, and warm, a complete change from the scared little creature they had seen standing alone on that foggy road. Emma smiled to herself. She didn't know who the dog belonged to or where it came from, but at that moment none of that mattered. What mattered was that it wasn't alone anymore. As the night grew deeper, Emma and Lucas felt grateful for the unexpected moment that had brought this gentle animal into their lives. They had no idea what tomorrow would bring. For now, there was only a quiet house, a warm light, and the soft breathing of a rescued dog who had finally found a safe place to rest. The night felt peaceful after Emma and Lucas brought the golden retriever home. The warm light of their living room made everything feel soft and safe. The dog was sleeping deeply on the old pillow Emma had given it. Its breathing was slow, like it finally felt secure after being alone outside. Emma sat on the couch, watching the little rise and fall of its chest, feeling a quiet sense of comfort. Lucas was in the kitchen, filling a bowl with fresh water, and another with some bread and boiled chicken they had in the fridge. "It's not exactly dog food," he said with a soft laugh, "but I think our friend won't mind tonight." Emma smiled at his words. "I think so too. He looks like he hasn't eaten in days." They both stayed quiet for a while, listening to the clock ticking softly on the wall. Outside, the night air was cold and still. The fog had grown even thicker, wrapping their small house like a soft white blanket. The wind made a faint whispering sound through the trees, but inside everything was warm and calm. When Emma placed the small bowl of food near the dog, it slowly lifted its head. For a moment it looked unsure, as if it wasn't certain this kindness was real, but when she gently stroked its head and whispered, "It's okay, sweetheart," the dog slowly began to eat. Its movements were quiet, careful, almost polite. Emma noticed how thin it was beneath all that soft fur. "Poor thing," she whispered again. After finishing the food and some water, the dog lay back down and closed its eyes. Its tail moved just a little, a small sign of trust. Lucas switched off the bright lights, leaving only the small lamp by the couch on. The house fell into a soft, peaceful silence. "I think we should call the local shelter tomorrow," Lucas said quietly as he sat beside Emma. Someone might be looking for him. Emma nodded. She didn't want to think about letting the dog go yet, but she knew it was the right thing to do if he belonged to someone. Yes, she said softly. But tonight he's safe. Hours passed gently. It was one of those nights where time seems to stretch out slowly. Emma wrapped herself in a blanket on the couch, not wanting to go to bed upstairs. She wanted to stay close to the dog just in case it woke up scared. Lucas stayed with her, lying on the other couch. They spoke softly about their day, about how strange it was to find a dog standing alone in the middle of a road, and how lucky it was that they were driving that way at the right moment. The dog made a few soft sounds in its sleep, like quiet little sighs. Emma felt her heart melt every time she heard them. She wondered what the dog had been through before finding them. She hoped it had not been alone for too long. Eventually, their eyes grew heavy. The lamplight grew dimmer as the fog outside thickened. The sound of the wind faded to almost nothing. The whole house seemed wrapped in a gentle stillness. When Emma woke up in the morning, sunlight was spilling softly through the curtains. The air inside was warm and smelled faintly like coffee. Lucas had already gone to the kitchen. She stretched her arms and smiled. It was a beautiful morning. She felt that peaceful joy that comes from small, kind actions. She turned to check on the dog. It was awake now, sitting near the window with its nose close to the glass. It looked calmer than last night, but still alert, as if it was listening to something far away. The golden fur around its ears shone softly in the sunlight. Emma walked over slowly and knelt beside it. "Good morning, sweetheart," she said in a cheerful voice. The dog turned its head and gave a soft wag of its tail. Lucas came into the living room with 2 mugs of coffee. "Good morning," he said with a smile. "Looks like our guest had a good night." Emma nodded. "He looks much better now. I think he's starting to trust us." Lucas handed her a mug and sat down. "After breakfast, we should take him to the vet or call the shelter. Maybe they can check if he has a microchip. That way we'll know where he came from." Emma agreed, even though a small part of her heart hoped no one would claim him. They both sat on the couch, sipping their warm coffee, while the dog continued to look out the window. The morning was quiet. The fog had started to lift, but a soft mist still hung over the trees. Birds were singing gently, their sound mixing with the soft creak of the wooden porch. Then something changed. The dog suddenly stiffened. Its ears perked up and its eyes narrowed slightly. It stood very still, staring at something beyond the front yard. Emma noticed this right away. "What's wrong, boy?" she asked softly, setting down her coffee. The dog didn't bark, but its body grew tense. It took a slow step closer to the window. Lucas walked toward the door, opened it a little, and looked outside. At first he saw nothing. The front yard looked calm, covered in soft morning light. "Probably a squirrel or something," he said lightly. But the dog didn't relax. It moved to the doorway and sniffed the air, as if trying to catch a scent. Emma followed, her heart beating a little faster, not because she was scared, but because she sensed that something wasn't quite normal. The dog lowered its head slightly, its tail no longer wagging. Lucas stepped outside onto the porch. The air was crisp and smelled fresh after the cool night. The trees at the edge of their property were covered in mist, making them look almost like a painted scene. "See? Nothing here," he said with a calm laugh. But just then, something caught his eye. In the soft, damp soil near the edge of the front yard, there were fresh footprints. Not small like a squirrel or a rabbit, these were larger. They were clear and new, as if someone or something had been standing there early in the morning. Lucas bent down to get a closer look. The ground was still wet from the night dew, and the prints were sharp. They led away into the trees and disappeared into the mist. "Did someone come by?" Emma asked softly from the doorway. Lucas shook his head slowly. "I don't know. Maybe just someone walking a dog early in the morning." But his voice didn't sound sure. The golden retriever stepped onto the porch and sniffed the ground near the prints. Its nose moved carefully and its ears stayed up. It wasn't barking, but it wasn't calm either. It looked toward the trees with a strange kind of focus. Emma felt a tiny shiver run through her. Not from fear, just from the strange feeling of not knowing what had happened while they were asleep. "Maybe it was nothing," Lucas said again, trying to keep the morning light. "We'll check around after breakfast." They brought the dog back inside. Emma made some scrambled eggs and toast for them, and a small plate of chicken for the dog. But even as they sat at the table, laughing softly about how the dog kept staring at the plate like it owned the house. That quiet, odd feeling stayed in the background of their minds. The dog ate but kept lifting its head to glance at the window. Its calm eyes from earlier had a hint of alertness now, like it knew something was out there. Emma tried to brush it off. "He's probably just being protective," she said, though her words were more for herself than Lucas. After breakfast, they got ready to take the dog to the vet. Emma slipped a soft red scarf around its neck like a temporary collar, and Lucas attached a spare leash. The dog didn't resist. It followed them quietly, but its eyes still flicked toward the trees as they stepped off the porch. The mist was slowly fading, but the air still carried that early morning silence, the kind that makes every small sound louder. The leaves under their shoes crunched softly as they walked down the path toward the car. "Maybe someone really was here this morning," Emma said softly. "Maybe," Lucas replied, "but whoever it was, they're gone now." He didn't want to worry her, but he couldn't stop thinking about the fresh footprints. The dog paused once before getting into the car, turning its head toward the trees again. Its ears twitched slightly. Lucas followed its gaze but saw nothing but thin mist and tall shadows of trees. Emma gently patted the dog's head. "It's okay. You're safe now," she whispered. The golden retriever finally climbed into the back seat. Lucas started the engine, and the soft hum of the car filled the quiet morning. As they pulled out of the driveway, Emma looked back through the window at their yard. The footprints were still there in the damp soil, leading into the trees. Something or someone had been there. The morning still looked beautiful, but it no longer felt completely calm. The couple didn't say it out loud, but they both sensed it. This wasn't just about rescuing a lost dog anymore. Something about this dog's story was bigger, and they had only just begun to discover it. The dog rested its head on Emma's arm as they drove toward town. She stroked its fur gently, trying to push away the small, uneasy feeling in her chest. But the dog's eyes stayed alert, watching the world outside carefully, as if it knew something they didn't. Emma sat quietly in the passenger seat, gently resting her hand on the golden retriever's soft fur. The dog lay curled up in the back seat, its eyes open and alert, as if it was trying to understand this new world it had suddenly become part of. The morning sun was still soft, painting the sky in pale yellow and warm orange. The car moved smoothly down the quiet road toward town. Lucas kept his eyes on the road. The silence between them wasn't heavy, it was thoughtful. They were both wondering the same thing. Where had this dog come from, and why had it been alone on that foggy road last night? "He's so calm," Emma whispered. "Yeah," Lucas replied. "But it's like he's..." Listening to something, Emma turned around. The dog's ears twitched at every passing sound. Birds, the wind, the car tires on the pavement. It wasn't scared. It was just aware, as if it remembered something important out there. As they got closer to town, they passed small houses with tidy gardens. A few people were walking their dogs. The retriever lifted its head slightly but stayed close to Emma's hand. She smiled softly. "You're safe now," she whispered. The vet's clinic was a small white building at the corner of a quiet street. Emma had been there before with her neighbor's dog, so she knew the people were kind. Lucas parked the car and they gently opened the back door. The retriever stepped out slowly, sniffing the air. Its tail wagged just a little, not wildly, but enough to show it trusted them more than before. Emma wrapped the red scarf around its neck again, making sure it felt secure. "Good boy," she said softly. "Let's get you checked." Inside the clinic, the air smelled faintly like soap and fresh flowers. A kind woman at the front desk smiled when she saw them. "Good morning," she greeted. "Oh my, he's beautiful. What's his name?" Emma hesitated. "We don't actually know," she admitted. "We found him on the road last night. He didn't have a tag." The woman's smile softened with understanding. "You did a kind thing bringing him here. We'll see if he has a microchip. If he does, we can find the owner. If not, we'll post about him on the shelter board." The dog followed Emma and Lucas into a small room where a gentle vet with silver glasses greeted them. He spoke softly to the retriever, kneeling down to let it sniff his hand first. "You've been through something, haven't you?" he said in a kind voice. The retriever wagged its tail lightly. The vet carefully checked the dog's ears, eyes, paws, and fur. "He's healthy," the vet said after a few minutes. "A little tired, a little thin, but overall okay." "That's good news." Emma smiled with relief. Lucas felt a weight lift from his chest. Then the vet used a small scanner to check for a microchip. The room grew quiet for a moment as everyone waited for the soft beep of the device. It scanned the back of the dog's neck. Once, twice, and then the vet shook his head gently. "No chip," he said. "Looks like nobody registered him. He might have been a stray, or maybe someone didn't keep his information updated." Emma gently stroked the dog's head. "Then what happens now?" she asked softly. The vet smiled kindly. "We'll put up his photo and details on the shelter's lost and found board. If someone is missing him, they'll call. But if no one comes forward after a few weeks, he'll need a new home." Emma's heart beat a little faster. A part of her already didn't want to let him go. Lucas glanced at her. He could read her thoughts as clearly as if she'd said them out loud. They thanked the vet and walked outside with the retriever. The sun was higher now, warming the pavement beneath their feet. Birds fluttered above them, and the small town was slowly coming to life. But even with all the normal morning sounds, the dog's eyes seemed to wander to the edges of the street, as if looking for something or someone. They decided to stop at a small cafe near the park before heading home. The outdoor tables were surrounded by little green hedges and hanging flower pots. It was the kind of place Emma loved. Quiet, cozy, and sunny. The dog lay beside their table with its head on its paws, calm but alert. The scent of fresh bread and coffee filled the air. Lucas took a sip of his drink while Emma tore a tiny piece of toast and offered it to the dog. It sniffed and then gently took it from her hand. "He's such a gentle soul," Emma whispered, smiling. Lucas nodded. "Yeah, but I can't shake the feeling that he's not just some random stray." Emma tilted her head. "What do you mean?" Lucas leaned closer, lowering his voice. "The footprints this morning. The way he keeps looking toward the woods, and how clean his collar looked beneath all that mud. It's like someone owned him not long ago." Emma's fingers paused on the dog's fur. She had thought the same thing but hadn't said it out loud. The dog seemed healthy, not like it had been wandering for weeks. Someone must have cared for him. She looked into the retriever's calm brown eyes. "Who were you waiting for out there?" she whispered after breakfast they returned home. The sun was brighter and the fog had fully lifted, leaving their yard bathed in soft golden light. The dog trotted happily up the steps of the porch as if it already knew the way. Emma opened the front door and laughed softly. "You act like you've lived here forever," she said warmly. Inside, everything was neat and peaceful. Emma filled a small bowl with fresh water, and Lucas spread a blanket near the couch for the dog to rest on. It lay down, tail gently tapping the floor. For the first time since last night, Emma saw it truly relax, but the calm didn't last long. The dog's ears perked up again. Its head lifted slowly. Its body didn't stiffen like before. It became quiet and still, like it was listening closely. Lucas noticed right away.
"He's doing it again," he said softly. Emma walked to the window.
Outside, everything looked normal. The trees swayed gently in the light breeze. A few leaves danced across the yard, but the dog stood up and walked closer to the door, nose low to the ground, sniffing. Lucas followed its gaze. "What do you see, boy?" he asked in a calm voice. The dog didn't bark. It just stared toward the edge of the yard, the same place where the footprints had been that morning. Emma walked out onto the porch, her heart beating a little faster even though nothing was visible. The air outside was warm but still carried that strange quietness that happens sometimes in the middle of the day. She looked at the ground and her breath caught softly. The footprints were gone, but in their place, the soil looked disturbed again, like someone had walked there recently and brushed away the earlier prints. "Lucas," she called quietly. He stepped outside and followed her eyes. His brows lowered just slightly. That wasn't like this earlier. Emma looked at the dog. It was standing very still, tail low, head pointed in the same direction. Not scared, just alert. Lucas exhaled slowly. Maybe it's just someone walking through the woods. Maybe a hiker or a neighbor. Maybe, Emma said softly. But something about it didn't feel simple. The rest of the afternoon passed in a strange mix of calm and quiet watchfulness. Emma cleaned the house, Lucas worked in the small shed, and the dog followed them around like a soft golden shadow. It explored the corners of the living room, gently wagged its tail when Emma gave it a toy, and curled up in the sunlight near the door. But every hour or so, it would pause, lift its head, and listen. It would stare toward the trees. It never barked, never growled, just watched. Emma tried to ignore the strange feeling growing in the back of her mind. She told herself it was nothing, maybe just the dog remembering where it came from. But as the sun slowly started to lower and painted the sky in warm orange, the uneasiness grew stronger. Lucas noticed it too. "I'll check the yard again before it gets dark," he said. Emma nodded, staying on the porch with the dog. The light was soft and golden. Crickets were already starting to sing in the grass. Lucas walked slowly along the yard, his shoes pressing softly into the earth. He didn't see anyone. No movement. No sound except the rustling of leaves. But at the edge of the yard, right near the start of the woods, he noticed something small and shining in the dirt. He bent down and picked it up. It was a small silver key. He turned it in his fingers. It was old but clean. It didn't belong to their house. "Emma," he called gently. She walked over, the dog following at her side. Lucas held up the key. This was in the dirt. Emma stared at it. That wasn't there this morning. They both turned their eyes toward the quiet woods. The sun was slowly sinking behind the trees, casting long shadows that stretched across the yard like silent fingers. The retriever stood between them, looking into the trees with focused eyes. Something or someone had been there again. Emma held the dog's red scarf a little tighter. She didn't know why, but she felt that this key wasn't just some random thing. It was connected to whatever story this dog carried with it. That evening, as the sky turned soft pink and then deep blue, Emma and Lucas sat together on the porch with the dog resting between them. The breeze grew cooler, carrying the gentle scent of pine and earth. Lucas turned the key in his fingers again. "Maybe we should call the police tomorrow," he said carefully. Emma didn't answer right away. She was looking at the woods. The trees stood tall and quiet, as if holding secrets in their shadows. The dog let out a soft breath and pressed closer to her leg. She gently stroked its head. They didn't know it yet, but this little golden retriever had brought something much bigger into their quiet lives. Something was waiting out there, just beyond the trees. The night felt cooler than usual, and a soft breeze moved through the trees behind the house. Emma and Lucas sat quietly on the porch with the golden retriever resting between them. The little silver key that Lucas had found lay on the table beside them, reflecting the warm yellow light of the porch lamp. Neither of them had said much since finding it. They didn't need to. The quiet itself carried a weight that made them both thoughtful. Emma looked at the key again, her brow slightly furrowed. "It's so small," she whispered, "but it's too clean to have been lying in the dirt for long." Lucas turned it slowly in his hand. It wasn't rusty. It wasn't old. It looked like something someone had been carrying recently. Maybe someone dropped it earlier today. Lucas said softly, trying to keep his voice calm. Emma's eyes drifted toward the dark line of the woods. "Or maybe someone left it there on purpose," she said almost in a whisper. The retriever lifted its head suddenly, ears perked, eyes fixed on the same direction she was looking. The breeze had grown just a little stronger, and the leaves at the edge of the trees made a soft rustling sound. The dog stood up, tail low but alert. Lucas followed its gaze. The trees looked still, but something about the way the shadow stretched across the yard made him feel like someone was just out of sight. He gently reached over and patted Emma's hand. "Let's not imagine too much. Maybe it means nothing." Emma gave a small nod, but her eyes stayed on the trees. She trusted her instincts, and they were quietly telling her that this wasn't just nothing. The retriever walked slowly down the porch steps, nose pointed toward the woods. Lucas stood up and followed it. Emma came too, wrapping her cardigan tighter around herself. The ground was soft beneath their feet, and the night air carried that fresh, damp smell of earth. They reached the spot where the key had been found. Lucas knelt down with a small flashlight, moving the beam slowly over the ground. It wasn't just disturbed soil anymore. There were faint marks, almost like someone had been standing there more than once. "See this?" Lucas said quietly. "The soil is pressed down here, here, and here, like someone's been coming back." The retriever sniffed the ground carefully. Its ears twitched, and it made a small sound, not a bark, just a low, curious breath. Emma felt her heart beating a little faster. She looked at Lucas, and he could see the same thought in her eyes. Someone had been here. They went back inside and locked the door, not because they were scared, but because something about the quiet night felt different now. The house felt smaller, warmer, almost like a safe little island surrounded by mystery. Emma made 2 cups of warm tea while Lucas placed the key on the kitchen counter. The retriever lay near the door again, head resting on its paws, but its eyes stayed open, watching. "Should we tell someone?" Emma asked softly. "Maybe tomorrow," Lucas said. "We can ask around the neighborhood first. Maybe someone lost a key. Maybe there's a simple explanation for everything." Emma nodded, but her fingers wrapped tightly around her mug. "I just don't want to ignore it if it's not nothing." Lucas reached across the table and squeezed her hand gently. "We won't ignore it," he said. The night grew deeper. The house grew quieter. One by one, the lights outside on the street turned off. The stars appeared, faint but bright, above the dark silhouettes of the trees. Emma and Lucas eventually decided to go to bed, but the retriever stayed downstairs near the front door, curled up on its soft blanket. Emma checked on it before going upstairs. She knelt beside it and whispered, "Good night, sweetheart." The dog looked up at her, its soft eyes shining in the dim light, and gave a tiny wag of its tail. Lucas turned off the lights, and soon the house was wrapped in gentle darkness. It was around 2 in the morning when Emma woke up suddenly. Not from a loud noise, not from a dream. She just opened her eyes, feeling that something was different. The room was still, the air cool, but there was a soft sound coming from downstairs. A sound so faint it almost blended with the wind outside. It wasn't banging or knocking. It was more like a shuffle. A gentle, slow movement. She sat up quietly, listening. Lucas stirred beside her. "What's wrong?" he mumbled sleepily. "Shh," Emma whispered. "Listen." He held his breath for a moment, and then he heard it too. That faint, soft shuffle, not inside the room, not quite outside either, somewhere near the porch. Emma's heart began to beat faster, not from fear but from that sharp awareness that wakes a person fully in seconds. She reached for the small bedside lamp and turned it on. The warm glow filled the room, making the quiet feel sharper somehow. Lucas climbed out of bed and moved to the window. From there he could see a small part of the front yard. The night outside was covered in soft mist again, like it had been the night they found the dog. At first he saw nothing. But then he noticed the porch light which they had left on flickering softly, and at the edge of the yard the shadows seemed just a little darker, as if someone or something was there. He didn't say anything to Emma yet. He just looked longer, his hand gently lifting the curtain. Emma stepped closer. "What is it?" she whispered. "Maybe nothing," he whispered back. But his voice didn't sound sure. Downstairs, the retriever stood up slowly. Its ears perked forward and it let out the softest low breath. Not barking, not afraid, just alert, like it was recognizing something it had heard before. It walked quietly to the door, its nails clicking softly against the wooden floor. Emma and Lucas crept down the stairs behind it. The house was dark except for the soft yellow glow from the porch light spilling through the window. The dog stopped at the door and pressed its nose gently against the bottom. Its tail wasn't wagging now. It was still like the rest of its body. Lucas unlocked the top latch very slowly and opened the door just enough to look outside. A cool breeze touched his face. The night air smelled of damp leaves. He saw the same shadows he had seen from upstairs. But this time something was different. The small wooden box that Emma kept beside the porch for plants was tipped over, and beside it on the steps was a folded piece of paper. Emma stepped closer and Lucas carefully picked up the paper. It wasn't torn or dirty. It looked like it had just been placed there. There were no markings on the outside, just plain white paper. Emma felt her throat tighten a little. Who would leave a note in the middle of the night? She whispered. Lucas opened it slowly. There were only 3 words written inside in neat handwriting. "I'll come back." The retriever made a soft sound in its throat like a quiet whine. Emma stepped back and Lucas folded the paper quickly, holding it in his hand as if it might blow away. The night felt even quieter now. They stood there for a long moment just listening to the stillness. No footsteps, no sound of anyone leaving. It was as if the night had swallowed whoever had placed that note. Lucas shut the door carefully and locked it. Emma leaned against the wall, her mind racing. "Lucas," she whispered. "Someone has been here, someone who knows about the dog." He nodded slowly. "I think so too." They sat on the couch with the dog curled beside them. The silver key still lay on the kitchen counter, catching the light from the small lamp. The folded paper with the 3 words sat on the table between them. Emma held the dog close, stroking its fur slowly. "We can't ignore this anymore," she said softly. Lucas agreed. "Tomorrow morning we talk to the police. And maybe we find out where this key belongs." The rest of the night passed in a strange quiet. They didn't sleep much. The retriever stayed near the door, not making any sound but always alert. Emma sat awake for a long time, watching the porch light through the curtains, half expecting to see a shadow appear again. But no one came. The sun finally rose slowly, painting the sky in pale pink and soft gold. Birds began to sing, and the world outside their window looked peaceful again. Too peaceful considering the paper that now sat on their table. Emma stood on the porch, holding the note in her hand. The air was cool and fresh, but her heart felt heavy. Lucas joined her, holding the silver key in his palm. They both knew something very real had started. The night wasn't just strange anymore, it was clear. Someone was looking for this dog, and whoever it was, they had been close. After breakfast, they decided to drive to town, not just to the shelter this time, but to the small police station near the center. Emma carried the note carefully in her bag. Lucas kept the key safe in his pocket. The retriever sat quietly in the back seat, but its eyes kept moving. It seemed to know this wasn't just another drive. When they arrived, they walked inside together. The police station was small, quiet, and neat. A kind officer behind the desk greeted them, and Lucas explained everything that had happened. The officer listened carefully, taking the note and the key. "We'll look into this," he said gently. "You did the right thing coming here. We'll also keep a watch around your area tonight, just in case." Emma felt a little safer hearing that, but she knew deep down that whoever had left that note wasn't finished yet. When they returned home, the golden retriever ran around the porch happily, as if nothing had happened. But Emma and Lucas felt the quiet of the yard differently now. The same trees, the same shadows. But now they knew someone had stood here in the night and written a promise. "I'll come back." The soft afternoon light wrapped the house in warmth. But beneath that warmth there was a soft, steady pulse of mystery. Something was unfolding, something connected to this dog, to the key, and to the... The sun rose quietly over the small town, painting the world in soft gold. A gentle breeze moved through the trees, and the birds sang their bright, clear songs. Everything looked peaceful and calm, so different from how the night had felt only a few hours earlier. Emma stood at the kitchen window, holding a warm cup of tea in her hands. The golden retriever was lying near the door, its fur glowing in the sunlight, its tail gently moving from side to side. It looked like an ordinary morning, like nothing strange had ever happened. But on the table behind her, the little silver key and the folded paper with the words "I'll come back" sat side by side. Those two things were quiet reminders that everything had changed. Lucas walked into the kitchen, still in his soft sweatshirt, holding his own mug of coffee. His hair was a little messy, but his eyes were sharp. He had barely slept. "Morning," he said softly. Emma nodded. "Morning." They stood there for a moment, both quiet, listening to the soft sounds of the morning, the wind through the leaves, the creak of the porch steps as they settled, the sound of the dog's slow breathing. "It feels strange," Emma whispered. "I know," Lucas replied. "Everything looks normal, but it's not. Not after last night." She turned toward him. "Do you think they'll come back?" Lucas set his mug down gently on the counter. "I don't know. But I do know we're not going to just sit and wait without answers. We gave the note and the key to the police. They said they'd keep watch. That's a good start." Emma nodded slowly, but her heart was still uneasy. It wasn't fear, just that quiet, uneasy feeling that something unfinished was waiting just outside their calm little world. The day passed slowly. Lucas had decided not to go to work so they could both stay home. The dog spent most of the morning playing on the porch. Emma brought out one of her old tennis balls, and to her surprise, the dog knew exactly how to catch it and bring it back. "See?" She laughed as she tossed the ball again. "You're such a smart boy," Lucas smiled. "Someone definitely trained him. That's not a stray dog trick." Emma nodded, watching as the retriever ran gracefully, tail wagging with each toss. There was something familiar about the way it moved, as if it had done this 1,000 times before. Whoever had owned this dog must have loved it once, or at least spent a lot of time with it. But as the sun climbed higher and the air grew warmer, the dog's happy energy slowly changed. It started to pause between throws, turning its head toward the woods. It didn't bark, but its eyes narrowed slightly. as if it sensed something far away. Emma followed its gaze but saw only the tall green trees swaying gently in the breeze. "Still watching," she said softly. Lucas walked up beside her, folding his arms. "It hasn't forgotten. Whoever left that note is connected to him. I can feel it." In the early afternoon, a soft knock came at the door. Emma's heart skipped a beat. She glanced at Lucas quickly, and he walked slowly to open it. It wasn't a stranger. It was a kind-looking officer from the small police station. He had a friendly face and a clipboard in his hands. The dog walked up to the doorway, tail wagging lightly, curious. "Good afternoon," the officer said kindly. "I just wanted to update you." Lucas opened the door a little wider. "Come in," he said. The officer stepped into the living room, looking around politely. "We checked the key," he said. "It belongs to an old storage shed about 1.5 miles from here, near the edge of town. It's registered to a man who lives outside the city. No criminal record, nothing suspicious. But when we went to the property earlier this morning, no one was there. The place looked like it hadn't been used much recently." Emma's fingers tightened around the edge of the chair she was holding. "So someone left that key here on purpose?" she asked. The officer nodded. "It seems likely. We also checked for any recent missing dog reports. There was one from 2 weeks ago. A golden retriever. Male, same description as this one. The owner said he disappeared near that same storage area. We've tried to call the number on the report, but we haven't heard back yet." Emma glanced at the dog, who was now sitting calmly by her feet. 2 weeks, she whispered. The officer gave them both a reassuring smile. "We'll keep checking. If we hear from the owner, we'll contact you right away. In the meantime, keep your doors locked at night and call us if anything unusual happens again." Lucas thanked him, and the officer left with a polite wave. When the door closed, the house felt quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet. Now they had a clue. "The storage shed," Lucas said softly. "That has to be connected." Emma sat down on the couch, gently stroking the dog's fur. If that person really comes back, maybe they're the owner. But why not just knock on the door in the day? Why leave a note in the middle of the night? Lucas shook his head slowly. "I don't know, but something about this isn't simple." The afternoon sunlight streamed through the windows as they sat together, letting everything sink in. The retriever lay on the rug, warm and calm, but it occasionally lifted its head and sniffed toward the door as if it remembered something from that place. The storage shed. The road, or something in between, Emma whispered. Almost to herself, "I want to know the truth. Not just for us, but for him." Lucas looked at her and nodded. "Then we'll find out." As evening approached, the light softened into warm gold. The air outside cooled down and the crickets began to sing again. Emma sat on the porch with the dog's head in her lap, slowly stroking its fur. It felt peaceful again, but she knew that peace was resting on something fragile. Lucas came out and sat beside her. "You know," he said softly, "it's strange how life changes. We were just driving home that night. We had no idea this little guy would change everything." Emma smiled faintly. "He's not just a dog anymore. He's part of something bigger." The retriever looked up at her with soft brown eyes, and for a moment everything felt still. The next morning came bright and early. The police called. They had found the man listed on the missing dog report. His name was Mr. Howard, an older gentleman who lived a short distance outside town. He had been away visiting family, and his phone had been broken for weeks. Emma and Lucas agreed to meet him near the storage shed that afternoon. They drove there slowly with the retriever in the back seat. The road twisted through fields and tall trees, the kind that whispered softly when the wind passed through. When they reached the old storage shed, it was quiet. The paint on the wooden door was peeling, and the metal roof had a dull shine from years of sun and rain. But something about the place felt gentle, not threatening. A man stood near the door wearing a faded jacket and a kind but tired expression. When he saw the dog, his eyes widened. "Buddy?" he whispered. The golden retriever lifted its head the moment it heard the familiar voice. Its tail began to wag, not just a little, but fast and full, the way dogs do when they recognize someone they love. It jumped out of the car and ran straight toward him, tail wagging like a golden flag in the sunlight. Emma covered her mouth with her hands. Mr. Howard knelt down as the retriever rushed into his arms. "Oh, buddy, I thought I'd lost you," he said softly. Lucas and Emma stood nearby, watching the reunion. It was quiet but full of emotion. The man held the dog close as if it was the most precious thing in the world. Mr. Howard explained that someone had taken Buddy 2 weeks earlier. He had looked everywhere but found nothing. He had left the note and the key at Emma and Lucas's house because he recognized the description from the shelter board and wanted to return at night when he thought no one would be home. He didn't want to frighten anyone. He just didn't know how else to find Buddy. Emma listened quietly. "That's why he was watching the woods," she said softly to Lucas. He remembered this place. He knew. The officer who had helped them was also there, standing a few steps away, making sure everything was safe and clear. Mr. Howard thanked Emma and Lucas again and again. Back at home, the house felt different without Buddy lying near the door. It felt quieter, almost too quiet. Emma sat on the porch steps that evening, watching the sunset turn the sky into soft pink and gold. She missed the sound of his paws on the floor already. Lucas came out and sat beside her holding 2 mugs of warm tea. "You're going to miss him," he said with a gentle smile. Emma nodded. "I already do. But he's back with his family. That's what matters most." Lucas looked out at the trees. The shadows no longer felt mysterious or heavy. They were just trees again. The footprints were gone. The fog was gone. The night had returned to normal. "Do you realize," Emma said softly, "if we hadn't stopped that night, Buddy might still be out there alone?" Lucas nodded slowly. Sometimes a small act of kindness changes everything. They both fell quiet, listening to the soft sounds of the evening. Somewhere in the distance a dog barked. Not Buddy, but the sound made Emma smile anyway. A week later, Mr. Howard visited their home with a small box of cookies and a handwritten note. Buddy came running up the steps, tail wagging wildly. Recognizing them instantly, he pressed his warm head against Emma's hand and she laughed softly. "He missed you," Mr. Howard said with a kind smile. Emma hugged the dog gently. "I missed you too," she whispered. The man thanked them again for their kindness. Before he left, Buddy gave one last happy bark, as if to say goodbye in his own way. When the porch became quiet again, Emma leaned against Lucas's shoulder. "What a strange few days," she said softly. Lucas smiled. "Strange, but beautiful."